What we're doing today is we're talking about the past and how the past can affect your future. What does that look like? I told you, we're going to level set and then we're going to be off to the races. Off to the races. Now, remember how we do on this channel, chat. What we do is we just think it through, right? In all things, we are thinking it through logically, right? A lot of times we don't know necessarily, where we're going to end up by the end of this. I don't come on this with no preconceived notion of what's what. Not me. That's not how I do. How I do is I sit here and I have a topic that I'm thinking about. I have something else on my mind, and we sit here and we figure it out, right? You can help me in the chat. You can put in your thoughts about the topic. We can figure out, well, what kind of conclusion can we come to based on what we're talking about, right? And so in this, the premise is that your past affects your future, right? That's kind of how we're coming at this. I think in this moment, I'm trying to figure out, because we're gonna figure out together, Chad. We're gonna figure out how this happens together. But from what I know, is your past can affect your future. A lot of people, especially when you start talking about like what is it? Not they're psychologists, right? They start talking about them whole Freudian things, right? Like, problem with your parents, problem with your mother, problem with your daddy, right? All that kind of stuff. Okay, I can see that, right? If you think about the way that you are brought up and the things that you understand are based on the environment in which you grew up in, right? That doesn't always have to be, but that does shape, you know, the realm in which the way and your perception of the world. Okay. Do you agree with that? If you agree, thumbs up in the chat. Um, because I also agree that that's a huge catalyst as to why people think the way they do, why people move the way they do, and why people just kind of exist in the way they do. Like, even if you talk about somebody's voice, right? The way that your cadence of speech, your accent or not, you know, whatever that is, it's all based on whom you're around, right? There are some people, though, who have grown up, let's just say, in the country, right? And everybody around them has country accents, but this one person doesn't. Like, they have this accent that didn't necessarily come from their environment. And if you notice, a lot of times that's kind of weird, especially when that person is from there, right? Like, not that they went somewhere else, came back with an accent, not that they grew up someplace else and then they moved there. I'm talking about a person who already, was born there, been there for all of their life, but yet they don't have that accent. That's always interesting to me. And it's interesting because I don't want to say that that debunks the fact that your past affects your future or your environment is the way in which you come up or you see and feel the world and move through the world. But I want to say if we had to put a number on it, 9 times out of 10, that's true, right? 9 times out of 10, that's true. And that's why if you go to a certain area of the country or any country for that matter, you're going to get accents, right? And not only accents, but also what do they call it? Um, dialects, right? So you can speak English, and okay, hold up, because I feel like I'm getting all over the place, and I don't want to get all over the place. I want to make sure that we're going back to the subject, okay? But I'm going to go off on this tangent for a quick second. If if you live in an area and you learn English from the people around you, right? Before you ever go to school, you're going to learn English from the people around you. Most kids, by the time they go to school, they can at least communicate, okay? albeit simply, but they can. Illustration. When I moved to Costa Rica, um, I was talking to someone there and they could speak a little bit of English and I could speak a little bit of Spanish. Okay. In this conversation, um, they want, I tried to speak Spanish because I knew that they spoke Spanish. They did not want me to speak Spanish because they wanted or was trying to learn English. So, in that conversation, what we ended up resolving on was, hey, I'll speak Spanish to you, and when you respond, you speak in English, right? So we can have a two-way conversation where I can tell what you're saying and whether it's right. You can tell what I'm saying and whether it's right. Right. And so as we're having this conversation, what we end up finding out is that, and this is what they told me, that, and this is what they said, and it's really funny to me. It was funny to me at the time, actually. Not as funny now, but it is funny still, which is this person said, I speak Spanish like a child, right? Like a child. At the moment, it was funny, but I did kind of take a little bit of offense to it, right? I took a little bit of offense to it because I had been practicing for years, right? Like I was in Spanish in school for 4 years, and then I took 2 years of Spanish in college, and then no, 2 semesters, excuse me, not 2 years, 2 semesters of Spanish in college, and I was going through all kinds of apps like Duolingo. They're not sponsoring this. Duolingo and there's a guy on YouTube that does Spanish lessons. I think his name is I think it's Sam. I think it's Spanish with Sam, something like that. But he's really good, and I like that more even than taking it in class because I don't know. It was something about the way he taught it that made it interesting to me, right? It made it interesting for me to be able to actually catch on to what he was saying and to get to a place of being close to fluid. So for me, that was what 6, 7 years in trying to speak Spanish, and it wasn't all consistent, right? Because 4 years was in high school, right? Ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and then go to college, and I got 2 semesters back to back, and now I'm going to Costa Rica 20 years later, right? 20 years after I took class. So before we went, I had already did about 6 more months of trying to get myself into the, speaking. Okay. And so they turn around and tell me that I speak like a child. The way that I speak the language is like a child. Okay. I took a little bit of offense to it, and then I went and I thought about it. Right. And let me tell you what I thought after thinking it through and taking my emotion out of it, right? Remember we talked about that. I thought it through, and what I realized was they ain't lying. It's true. It's true. I did speak like a child. Why did I speak like a child? Because if I only have a total of that'd have been a total of 5 years, right? 4 years in school, 2 semesters, right? That's a year, so that's five, and then 6 months. So I'd be 5.5, right? 5.5, trying to speak this language. And it wasn't consistent, meaning, when you're a child and you're in, let's say you live with your parents, okay? Because we're still talking about the past and how it affects your future. That's the whole point of this stream today. We're talking about how the past affects the future and whether or not it's changeable. Okay, follow me. We'll get there. But if you're living with your parents and you're speaking, you're learning the language, whatever language that is for where you live. You're learning the language. What happens? What happens is not only are you speaking it when they're trying to communicate, well, when you're trying to communicate to them, but also that's all you're hearing, right? In the environment in which you live, almost all you hear is the language of the community you live in. So if you live in a majority, not a majority, basically, if you live in the United States, most of the communities are going to be majority speaking English. No matter where you go, you can go to the store, you're going to hear English. You're going to go to school, you're going to hear English. You're going to go to your friend's house, English. It doesn't matter where you go, you're almost going to hear English anywhere across this US. So if that's the case, then even as a child, you start to learn the cadence, right? You start to learn where there are pauses or breaks within words because you're hearing it repetitively, right? You turn on the TV, you're hearing English. You're not seeing it, you're not reading those subtitles, you're not doing all that other extra stuff. You're literally hearing and taking in English 24/7 for the same, let's say for the same 6 years, right? 5.5 to 6 years. Let's say that same 5.5, 6 years. You're hearing English every day. Every day. Almost no other language. Almost. Unless you watch Dora the Explorer or some, Handy Manny or something like that. You might have got some other language. But most of the time, you were hearing English. Clear out, straight away, all day long, all night long, English. Right? So, how did I expect to go to another country and speak fluently in a way that would be mature, right? A mature understanding of the language. Why? Because I it wasn't 24/7, right? Up to that point, up to the point I got there, it wasn't 24/7. It wasn't all the time. It was me taking time out of my regular English speaking day to put some time into learning it. So the cadence of words, like when someone in Costa Rica would talk, they're talking faster than I can keep up with, right? And I'm gonna say it this way: faster than I can translate in my head. Therein lies the problem, right? The problem was I was trying to translate it in my head. That's where the problem came in. And so when the person told me that I spoke Spanish like a child, and then the crazy part is, um, the lady told me, "Oh, that's so cute," right? You like, "Oh, that's so cute. You speak Spanish like a child." You know what I'm saying? I mean, it could have been seen as a come on, I guess. I mean, I guess it could have been, but I mean, yeah, okay. Let's get off that. The point is that when if she said that, then it's more so what she's trying to say is that you don't have an adult type grasp of the language, right? And I shouldn't have expected to, but I did. And the reason why I took offense was because I had put time into it, but I just hadn't engulfed myself in that environment. Okay. I feel like that was a great example for what I'm about to say about English, right? So, an accent, when you go to a certain area or you brought up in a certain area, you'll hear the accents. If you live there and you've always lived there, you probably won't hear the accent because to you that's normal, right? Even though they're speaking English that someone from another part of the country may come there and they hear it and can't distinguish it from some foreign language. It doesn't sound like English to them, right? It doesn't sound like English to them. Because they don't know when the pauses are, because of the dialect, because of the way they hold their letters, because of the way they intonate and pronounce the words that they're using. Okay. And I know y'all see that all the time. And there's some places in this same country that speaks English, but it's such a hard accent that it's so hard to understand for the person who doesn't live there, for the person who didn't grow up there. Right. So I'm saying that to say that we are almost in total a product of our environment, right? The way we speak, the way we understand the world is a product of our environment. For me, when we ended up moving out of the country, one of the biggest factors was because I didn't want my kids to only grow up in the area that we were in. I didn't want that. I wanted them to see the world and experience the world on a larger scale, right? Because a lot of people that grew up in one area are even scared to travel. And I think it's because they're not sure what the rest of this world is. Like you might see it on TV and all of that kind of stuff, but then you to go there, you end up, you know, in something that's brand new. It doesn't feel the same. Almost everything is different, right? It's almost the equivalent of if you grew up in the country and then you go, on the weekends to the city. That's two totally different experiences, right? The people, you could stay okay, let me give reference. Let me give reference. If you live in, let's say, DC area, if you live in like New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, like, OKC, even Tulsa, right? Almost any urban city, you can go less than 10 minutes out of the city, and the people 10 minutes out of the city limits dress different, walk different, talk different, have a different understanding of the world, and different belief system. Well, they might believe the same thing, but the way in which they believe is different. It shows, it expresses itself differently. Different dialect of the way they use the language, right? That's why somebody in the country can go to the city and the city people are talking about, oh, you from the country, or vice versa. They may say, oh, look at these city boys, look at these city slickers. You know what I'm saying? Now that's some old language, but the point I'm trying to get at is that you can tell, a person that grew up in that area can tell when someone in that area is not from there. Walk, talk, dress, all of that stuff matters because you're a product of the environment in which you grew up in. Those other people are a product in the environment that they grew up in, right? So when those two meet, it's a difference. There's a noticeable difference. Difference in what I hear, difference in what I see, difference in what I feel, because the energy between the two is different also, right? The spirit by which they communicate and it's just all different. Now, you can do the same thing if we take that same comparison, right, between country, city, country, you know, um, state to state, all of the make all those comparisons, and it all holds true. There's no two states that are alike. There's states that are similar, but they're not alike. Their understandings, the way they carry themselves, is still different, right? If you look, if you, we could do the same thing between generations, okay? We could do the same thing between generations. So if you look at the baby boomer generation to the next generation, which would have been Gen X, if you look at those two generations, different. If you look at Gen X to millennials, different. Millennials to Gen Z, different. It's only some years difference, right? Only 20 years at best, right? 20 years at best difference between a generation. Yet they're hugely different. Different in the way, in the words that they use, different in the understanding about the world, different in their experience, right? It's all different. That's why if someone was to, I hope no one does, but it's true that people do. If someone goes to jail in the 80s and comes out in 2000, that world was different. That's only 20 years, not only because 20 years is a long time, but still, in the grand scheme of time, 20 years is short, right? From 1980 to 2000, do you know how much the world changed? Right? The world completely changed. And then let's not even talk about 2000 to 2002, right? If you look at what happened in the year 2000 to the year 2002, that's 2 years, the world changed almost overnight. Why? Because of one event that took place. It made the world look different. It made people's experience and understanding of the world different. It made people have hard stances on issues that before would have been more, let's talk about that. Now it's not, let's talk about that. Now it's, this is what it is, right? So that's a prime example. Just between 2000 and 2002, a shift happened which made the past affect the future, right? Let's do it again. 2020, right? 2018 to 2022, the world looked different, completely different. Even now, we're in 2026 at the time of this recording, the world is different. It's so different than 2016, right? That's a 10-year span, yet the world is different. This is the reason why I think about, like, the past affects the future, yes, but the past will never be again. It will never be again. Now, right now, you can say, because this is 2026, this is the future. Why can you say that? Because in Back to the Future, they went to the year 2025. If I'm not mistaken, it was either 2024 or 2025 when they went to the future, right? And y'all can get in the chat and tell me what the date was, but I think it was either 2024 or 2025, and I think it was like May 5th. If I'm not mistaken, it was like May 5th, 2024 or 2025. One of the two. If you know, get in the chat and say it. So that means that now we're in 2026. We're in the future. That movie was made in the 80s. I think it was like 85, right? And they went 20 years ahead. That's why I think it's 2025. But anyway, they went like 20 years ahead and the world was drastically different. To be honest, there's a lot of things in Back to the Future that does exist now that didn't exist then. The things that they showed us in Back to the Future does exist. It didn't exist when the movie came out, but it exists now. So did they really go to the future? Did they really come to what we would call the present? You know what I'm saying? Back from 1980, that world was drastically different. Because if you think about it, that's 40 years, right? Let me think about that. 85 to 2005 would have been 20. Add 20 more years on it. Yeah, they went 40 years in the future, roughly. 40 years in the future. The world is different. And it doesn't matter when you do that same thing. It could have been the 1800s to the 1920s. The world would have looked drastically different because in the 1800s there weren't cars, not until the end of the 1800s. So if you go to like 1835, 18 anything before 1890, they didn't even have cars, if I'm not mistaken. The cars might have came about maybe 1880s. But point is that it no cars to cars on the road. 1920s, cars on the road. People getting hit on the street by cars. People walking down the street because they're used to walking on the street because they were horses, and they're getting hit by cars because cars are traveling faster than horses. And even back then, in the early 1900s, there were electric cars. So imagine you went from a horse to an electric car, and that electric car has no sound. You don't hear it coming, but it's driving as fast as okay, 20, 30 miles an hour, maybe even 40, 50 max, right? 50 miles an hour max on an electric car back then. And it probably didn't last that long, but it's just a point, you know, that speed, anything that was traveling over 30 miles an hour, because how fast does a horse go? How fast is a horse? Let's look it up. You know how we do. Let's go to the desktop. Let's go. Let's see what it is. How fast is a horse? Let's look it up. Here we go. Let's go to the desktop and we're gonna look it up. Let's go to Google. Google. Let's say um how fast is a no, what is the top speed of a horse? Top speed of a horse. Typically, like I said, right? Now, elite racing horses can reach 40 to 55, but the average, you might as well just say 20, 30 miles an hour. Thoroughbred name Winning Brew holds the official record at 43. Okay, so if we say even at 43 miles an hour, most things that are mechanical car wise can go over 50 miles an hour, right? Like at this point, even kids, little, you know, scooters can hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 miles an hour. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you have an electric car and it's traveling 30 some odd miles an hour, you're not used to that, and you step out on the street and this thing plows over you, bro. I'm telling you, 40-year difference in the world is huge. There's a huge change. Let's take it even further, right? If that didn't give you the understanding, then let's go even further. Because the whole point is that the past affects the future. Even when you look to the past to tell you how to handle the future, okay? Or if you're looking for signs that come from the past to tell you the future, I'm saying the world is different. Let's go back. Here's the next one. The next one is if you have, and a lot of people do this because a lot of people believe these things, okay? I'm not saying I don't. All I'm doing is putting a point on it. A lot of people believe these things. So you can include me. Hey, here it is. If you read the Bible, if you read the Quran, if you read any one of these holy texts that are from centuries ago, right? The world is different. If we just said that the world is different within a 10-year span, and then we say the world is really different at a 20-year span, and then we said that the world is hugely different on a 40-year span, and then we look back 1800s before a car to now, let's say about what's that? 20, that's 140 years roughly, right? Maybe let's call it 150 to make it even, that cars have been around. If you go pre-car, that world is tremendously different. You couldn't even fathom how many differences it is if you went back to that time. There's things that we understand now, even if we make a movie about the past, there's things that we innately know or understand because they make the movie based on looking at it from a now standpoint. But if you look at it, if you make that movie based on a then standpoint, some of these things that we think exist didn't exist. For instance, why does it look like when we look at some of these older movies that, especially the ones that are made now to represent old, a lot of times the way that they are clothed, some of the ways that the houses are set up, um, you know, there are conveniences that they have conveniently made in the house. However, back then, that would have been a rarity to find. Not saying nobody had it, but it would be so rare that most people don't even know what that is. Now, this is just my belief because I can look at the time, I can look at the drastic time, right? Do you think everybody had the same type of pot? No. Where was the mass marketing? I mean, where was the mass what do you call it? What do you call it when um yeah, there wasn't assembly lines, right? That the assembly line didn't come into play until Ford in the 1900s. I think the first assembly line was in 1905, 1905, 1908 or something like that. So you didn't have this mass market appeal on a product. Everybody wouldn't have had it. You know what I'm saying? Because they had custom people. They had people who made things based on them. So maybe everybody in one community would have had it. Maybe, depending on the price, right? Also, to get the materials to be able to make it on a grand scale would have been a whole nother level too, right? So I think we need to put some things in perspective because a lot of things pe- people are the way they understand things is based on the community they were in, right? We established that from the beginning. If you have an understanding of something, that doesn't mean somebody in the next community over understands it the same way. That's not state to state. That's not country to country. I'm talking about community to community, one side of the city to the other side of the city, right? That's why you have also, you know how sometimes when they have, oh, I'm north side, oh, I'm south side, whatever, and everybody has their lingo. They have their way that they walk, the way that they talk, the way that they dress is just different. So if you look at that on the scale that we just said, at 150 years difference, it becomes exponentially different. Okay. Now, let's go back to what I talked about the old text. If we start looking at the Bible, the Quran, any of the ancient, text or whatever, and they're referencing certain things, they did not have the understanding of what we think the thing is. So I'm gonna say this way. If you have a definition of a word, people need to understand that words' meanings change over time, right? If we use a saying and I said to you, just rant like out, like you said something, I respond with no cap. Most of us right now know what that means, right? If I say no cap, then you like, oh, he's not joking. He agrees. We're on the same page. Understood. Like, that's kind of how it's used. If you look at the meaning of no cap in the 80s, you might say no cap and they like, oh, well, let me take my hat off. They thinking a baseball cap. You know what I'm saying? If you go back before that, right? Take 40 years before that, You know, they might be thinking that a cap is on a bottle. You know what I'm saying? My bottle don't have a cap. My bottle has a cap. Like, whatever. Like, it's just the usage of what that language means at that time. So if we start to get understanding on certain topics, what I'm getting to in this is we need to understand the time as a major factor of the context, right? And I think people are missing that fact because if you hard translate something, there's a time factor that comes into play. Because everything, remember, we had a whole stream on it and I showed you everything in this world is over time. Time plays a huge point when you start looking at context, when you're trying to get your context clues. So if I'm talking about the Bible and I'm referencing something from the Bible, we have to remember that the definition of that word might have changed. And this is coming from someone who, every time we don't understand something, we go look it up, right? But what we have to remember is that language is fluid. Language is fluid. It will change depending upon the understanding of it in the time that you're looking for the definition of it. And remember that the definition is written a little bit past, a little bit behind where you're asking for it, right? So if I say, what is the definition? Matter of fact, let's just go to dictionary and let's see. Let's go to dictionary.com, right? And we'll just look up the word of the day. Okay. Let's go to the desktop. Here we go. Desktop. And so the word of the day is bonton, right? Bonton. What does that mean? Let's see. Bonton. Now, fashionable society, right? Fashionable society. First things first, I've never even heard that word. I've never even heard a word called bonton. Bonton. What is that? Let me. Yep, that's the word. Could y'all hear that? I don't know what that means. I do not know what that means. I don't fashionable society. So okay, that's by definition, fashionable society. How do we use that in a sentence? Does anybody know? Let's find out. Bonton, bonton, right? Bonton. So now, good or elegant form or style, something regarded as fashionably correct. Now that's interesting. Something regarded as fashionably correct. Fashionable society. So what does this say right here? This is the bonton in this circle is to dress well and know influential people. Oh, oh, the bonton in this circle. That to me, you're using it as the understanding in this circle, the way we get down in this circle, the modus operandi of this circle, right? Is to dress well and know influential people, but something regarded as fashionably correct. So yeah, I don't get how this is being used. I hear it, but I don't feel like this definition serves the way it's being used in the sentence personally. Y'all tell me if y'all feeling me. Like you said yes. Like this definition right here does not hit for me when not when the way it's used in this sentence. It's definitely not. Okay. Sophisticated manners or breeding. Sophisticated manners or breeding. Sophisticated. This is British. This is the British form of the word. Sophisticated manners or breeding. And this is the American. Good or elegant form or style. Good or elegant form or style. The bonton in this circle the good form, the good or elegant form is to dress well and know, but to say in this circle, the good or elegant form in this circle. Okay, this is what we think is style. This is what we think is dope. This is what we think is hot. Okay, I get it. So they call it the bon ton, the bon ton. So I could say this is my bon ton. This is my good or elegant form or style, right? That's what I could say. This is my bon ton because it's a noun. So yeah, it comes across as me. It's a way of thinking, right? Because style is a way of thinking, a way of believing you are or something is. So okay, bon ton. But the point, let's get back to the point, okay? Let's get back to the point because we're getting a little sidetracked with the bon ton. But what I'm saying is, even in what I just showed, matter of fact, let's go back because I'm gonna show you this because even when in just what I just showed, this says good or elegant form or style. This is based on the American definition, right? In the American dictionary. But if we go over here to the British dictionary, it's sophisticated manners or breeding. That's from two different countries. It still has fashionable society, but this definition number one is usually the word that this is the way, this is the main meaning of this word. This is the way that most people in the world will know this word based on definition one. So this is saying sophisticated manners or breeding in Britain. Let's see if there's anybody, if there shows, okay, etymology, it's French word. Interesting. Okay. Secret societies, however, are anything but forbidden under Dutch rule, and job, on the contrary, is rather bon ton to belong to some one of the lodges of Freemasonry exist out there. It is rather bon ton, sophisticated form or style to belong to one of the lodges. Oh, yeah. So it's sophisticated. Okay, so you can change it to it's bon ton. This is bon ton. Oh, hey, listen, I might use that. But you remember? Okay, hey, do y'all remember? Y'all remember back in the day? Um, there was a Jamaican rapper named Buju Banton. Y'all remember that? Hit me in the chat if you remember Buju Banton. And I might be saying his name wrong, but it was like Bougie Bonton or Bougie Bonton or something like that. But it had Bonton at the end. And so, and if his name was Bougie Bonton, then he's saying sophisticated style is bougie. Like his agreed upon form or elegant style is bougie. If it was Bougie Bonton, which I think it was. Let's look it up. Hey, this is what I do. This is what I do. Bougie, bougie. I don't even know how to spell it. I'm just gonna spell bougie. Bougie bon ton. Okay, it was bougie bon ton. Hold up. What happened to it? Uh, what is it? Reggae. No, not reggae. It wasn't reggae. Yeah, it was reggae. Reggae. It was bougie bon ton, but it was B-A-N, Banton. Okay, let me show. Oh, dang. I didn't even put it up. My bad, y'all. So look. Boom. It was bougie bon ton, right? What does that mean? What what is this an actual word, right? Is this an actual word, or is it meaning something else, right? What does mean? Because we just said that bonton, we just said that bonton is good or elegant form or style, right? That's what we just said. And so if that's what bonton means, then bourgeois bonton Stage name, blah, 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 blah. Buju is a childhood nickname from his mother referring to a chubby child or breadfruit. Okay. Bonton is a Jamaican term for a respected storyteller or DJ, adopted by a tribute to Burrow Bonton. Okay, so storyteller, Bonton is a slang for a skilled or respected DJ or storyteller. Okay, so that's his skill. So if you change the A, right, change the A to a O, and you get form or style. Leave it at A, and you got skill. For a skilled or respected DJ, a storyteller, Bonton. Interesting. Interesting. Hey, so close, but yet so far. But the point is, I'm getting at is that if if you look up that word now, right? We have one definition. If we could go back, because you know how sometimes you could see in the dictionary where it says archaic, or it might say medieval, or it might say old English. Like it's saying that because it's saying that there used to be another understanding of this word, right? Right now we have things like the Urban Dictionary. The Urban Dictionary is going to give you a word that is used in an urban way, but in the normal dictionary, that word is understood in a different way, which is the reason why you have those what we call dialects or what we call um ebonics, slangs, all that kind of stuff, right? It all it is another understanding of a word. It's another usage from a different community than the community that makes the dictionary or the community on a whole. You see what I'm saying? Now, if we take that back to the Bible, it's the same thing. Depending upon the writer, depending upon who wrote that book, when they wrote that book, what where they're from, right? What their understanding of the world was, when they wrote that book in the Bible or that verse or that word, when they used that particular word, it might not mean what the world understood that word to mean. It could mean both, and it could work. The usage of both sides of that word can work in that context. But one of them is meant to be meant. The other one is not, right? I'm saying that because how do you think we can sit here and have a conversation and the reason why I continue to say, let's go to the dictionary, right? Especially on my channel, I say, let's go to the dictionary, let's look it up, right? We say a word, we're using a word that it can mean that, but we want to level set because there's times where I could be talking to you and I'm saying a word and y'all are not getting the complete understanding of how I'm using it, right? Or you may type a word in the chat and I'm like, because I don't understand how you're using it. So we look the word up and then we can get a level playing field and say, hey, apples to apples. Here's what I believe that word means. Here's what I believe that word means. We look it up. We have an unbiased medium that says, well, this is what the word is. Okay, so cool. If I got it wrong, then we'll figure out another word that gets the point across that I'm trying to say. If I'm using it right, then now you know what the right way to use that word is. Not saying your way is wrong, but the way I'm using it so that way when you hear me say it, you know what I'm referencing, right? Because we have to level set if we're going to agree upon any discussion. If we have a conversation, we got to agree somewhere. And I feel like the first place to agree is the language. So when I'm in Costa Rica and I'm having this conversation and the person is telling me that I'm speaking like I'm a child, that's the reason why I took offense, because I feel like as a child, how can I get level with you to have a understandable conversation? But when I think about it, I can do the same thing with my kids when they were young, right? My kids were young and they were communicating with me and they're saying, Daddy, and they pointing or they're, saying that they want juice or they're saying that they want, food or, Captain Crunch or whatever they want. They're saying just that in a way that I get what they're saying, but they're not using all those words because they don't know all of those words, right? They don't know, Daddy, I would like a bowl of Captain Crunch because I'm hungry. They, they can't say all of that. There may be some kids that can, but you understand my point? They're only using the words that they know to try to communicate as effective as they can. Even though I may know more words, that doesn't make me a more effective communicator, right? Because there's times where I can use so many words that I'm actually blurring the point that makes it unintelligible or ununderstandable for the person who's listening, right? Because it's all about talking on a level that the person who's listening to can actually understand what it is you're trying to say, which is the reason by which I'm going to the dictionary so much on these streams, because I want you to be able to understand. I want you to be able to follow. I want us to be on the same page. We get on the same page, now we can get, like I just talked about in the last in the last one, we can get understanding, right? Above all, get understanding, which means that we can get to the point of agreement. Because how can you keep coming back to my channel if you don't agree with what I'm saying? And it might just be because there's a misunderstanding in the words that I'm using. That's why we need to level set. That's why we need to have an even base. So the base on this channel is going to be the dictionary. Okay? So now you know, now I know, and now we can get to the next point. Next point. When we think about looking at the past, what is the level set? Right? What is the level set for the words that we're using? Because if you look in a dictionary now, like I said, it's going to give you possibly a different definition of that word. I can, most would say, well, you got to look at it in the Greek, right? You got to look at it in the Greek. You got to read it in the Hebrew. You know what I mean? Go back to the original language. And that is true. That is really true, which a lot of people do now, because you can get a Bible or you can get a book that can give you what that original language meant, right? But I still I still want to caution even that, because even if you're translating that, right, from the Hebrew, from the Greek, even if you're translating it, you're still missing a point of understanding. What is that point? That point of understanding that you're missing is still the context, because you don't know the community that the writer grew up in, right? You can assume, let's just say Peter, right? Let's say Peter wrote the book, then Peter was a fisherman, right? And if I'm wrong, let me know in the chat. You have uh um what is it Matthew? Is it Matthew? I think Matthew was a tax collector, right? Um, like my point, like I'm trying to set the stage for this because I need you guys to really get this point, that even when referencing the Bible, because it was so long ago, the context is still the part that is missing, because you don't know the community in which that person grew up. So you can quickly encode language into a writing if you know, right? So we do it all the time. We do it all the time in raps, right? In the rap community, we do it all the time. We encode words because the people who know will get exactly what we're saying. Other people will still get a meaning of the song, right? It's like a metaphor, right? People use metaphors all the time. Um, but it's even deeper than that, right? It's like double, triple, quadruple entendres. You know what I'm saying? And you know what entendre is? If you don't, let's level set. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a metaphor is, but let's look up entendre. Uh-oh. My bad, people. Let's get to an entendre. Shoot. What? Why in the world is it acting like I can't? 1 second. I'm trying to get this. For some reason, my, my browser keep wanting to do this stupidness. Okay. So let me make sure I got it so I can show you. Yeah, it's just acting funny for some reason, and it tried to kick me out of it. I think the problem is that the word entendre is not an English word. Therein lies the problem. Let me show you. So entendre is a French verb. That's the reason why it's not coming up in the US dictionary. It's a French verb meaning to hear, to understand, or to mean. And in English, it's famously used in double entendre for a phrase with two meanings, one often risque. It can also mean to intend or to get along with someone, as in s'entendre, to get on well. S'entendre, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what s'entendre is. But the point is that if we get back to this double entendre, and there's triple entendres and quadruple entendres where you have a phrase with two meanings. One often risque, you can say risque, but it don't have to be risque, but it's where you've coded it when you don't want somebody else to understand what you're saying. That's what it means. So now we understand it's a French verb. Entendre is a French verb, to hear, to understand, or to mean. That's why when you look at when people are making raps, they're coding in another way for somebody who understands, because of the community they live in, what they're actually trying to get across, what the point of this really is. Because the surface meaning that everybody understands is not the point. The point is what's underneath it. Look at, again, if we go back over to the Bible, that's what you get. You get a book of writings from different authors, right? You get a collection of books that they put into one big book that then has different writers. Those different writers all came from different places and different times in the world. Different places, different times, different communities, different understandings of even Greek and Hebrew, different understanding, because we just said that I can live on one side of town, you can live on a different side of my town, and we would still understand some words differently. We make the generality of language, we could understand, we probably be able to communicate still. But the understanding of the words that I could code into something would be different because of the community I live in and how they understand what I'm saying. But on the other side of town, y'all don't understand what I'm saying. This is the reason by which I'm saying if you got 66 books, let's just say the basic Bible that most people know about, 66 books from writers across a time span and across countries, you're telling me that each person understood English the exact same way and used the words surface level so everybody would get an understanding easily. Is that what you believe? I don't believe that. I believe that they were trying to get messages across, messages that are higher than the surface, right? When you think about the things that they were saying in reference to even God, understanding the word, understanding how to live, understanding how, even the world was created and what the belief system should be and what it will be and what's coming and what was past and the relations and all of that kind of stuff. That stuff was coded to help you to get to understand something if you were a part of that community, so that way you could really take in the gist of all that is being said. And that's the reason why you can read the Bible multiple times, and each time that you read it, you get a different understanding of different things that you've read, a deeper understanding, because the words are coded. It's double and triple entendres on things. Because yes, it means that, but it also means that. Yes, it means that, but it also means that. And then levels of context in chapters. So if in this chapter, if you read this chapter by itself, it means this thing. If you read that passage by itself, it could mean a couple things, but that's not the way you should get it. You should read the whole chapter. So if you read the whole chapter and understand what the point is, then you can read it based on the book. That book. If you read it based on the book, you get a different understanding of that chapter, which gives you a different understanding of that text. There's levels to this. If you look at that one piece of text and you match it with something that went on earlier where they referenced that same thing earlier on in the Bible, it should give you the same meaning later, even though it might be mentioned differently. It's all about understanding. And that's why it always says, and I said it yesterday and I said it in the live before that, the day before that, which is above all, get understanding. Get understanding, because understanding can be a challenge to do. Because we're looking across time, we're looking across space, we're looking across communities, we're looking across humans, we're looking across language, all of that, just to get an understanding. And so, can your past affect your future based on what we just talked about? Yes. Because how can I look to the past for my future if I don't understand the past? Right? I can only look to the future because I can't understand the past. So I can only look to the future. That's why you have to get an understanding. Not that you have to dwell there. You don't have to live in your past. You don't have to be like, oh, my past is just so great. Whatever. No, that's just things that you went through that can help to point you in the right direction for your future. Right? If though you don't like what happened in your past, say you do have an understanding of your past. I did sit with it, Rich. I was sitting there and I thought about my past. I thought about the way I grew up. I wrote down this timeline of all the trauma that I've had in my life and all of this kind of stuff. Right. So I get my past. I know exactly where I'm at, and I know the things that I still got to deal with in my life. Wonderful. Great for you. But now comes the next level. You can reach back and change that, right? You can reach back and talk to your previous self and tell yourself that you can get through it, to tell yourself that you can make it, to tell yourself that there's another way. You can do that. Because even though there's time is not linear in the way that we believe it is. Now, this can sound, but it's not. Because you can speak to anything in this world. You can. You have the power to. It's all in you. You can speak to anything in this world. So my point is for you to speak to yourself in the past and heal the trauma that you went through, because it doesn't have to affect your future. Too many people are relying on, well, so and so did this to me, so and so did that to me. My parents, my mom wasn't there for me. My daddy left me, or I had to fend for myself. Okay, that's your experience. Not that I can't empathize with it, because I can. I've had experiences that were challenging too. But what I'm saying is that you don't let that totally control where you're going, right? Just because you had that doesn't, just because you went through that doesn't mean that your future can't be better than anything you've ever seen, right? That doesn't mean you can't dream for something that's way, way bigger than anything else that you've ever been a part of, right? Martin Luther King said, "I had a dream." Right? He didn't say I had a dream. He said I have a dream. It's an ongoing thing. I have a dream. My dream is still with me. I have a dream. This is what we're talking about when we say, you know, you can sit here now at this point in your life and speak to your future, or you can speak to your past, because everything comes back around. Everything comes back around. No matter what it is, it'll come back around. It doesn't mean that you'll get the same day ever again, right? Because you will never be the same age that you were back then. However, you can be stuck in that age emotionally. You can be stuck in that age mentally. So that means that you have to speak to that young person so that way you can have a better future. That way you can grow. So now that we understand that everything is based on context, time, environment, space, country, and language, we have to now figure out a way to get the context, right? So we can gain understanding. So I challenge you today to go back to the things that you've had challenges with. Think about some of the things that you think that you understand now, and whether or not you actually understand them correctly, right? And when I say go back to those things, I'm talking about go back to the core items of you, the things that you think are core to you. This is how I am. This is who I am. Where did I get this from, right? Like if I say that this is who I am, then where did I get those qualities from, right? Well, first, what are those qualities, right? Because if I can say, well, this is, if I could tell somebody, and a lot of times you say it in a proud way, right? Like, well, this is who I am. I mean, that's me. That's me. This rich. This how I am. If that's the case, what is that, right? Because if you can say that this is how you are, then write down what those things are. What are the things that make up you? What are the belief systems that you believe that make up you? What are the understandings that you've learned over time that make up who you are? What are those? Because if you can figure out what those are and you can list them out, now you can say, okay, this is who I am. Now, where did each one of these things come from? Do a deep dive, right? Do a deep dive. Figure out where these pieces came from that make up who you are. You'll find that, well, I talk like this because, you know, I learned English from my mom, and she was the one that was teaching me English, right? And so I have this type of speech pattern because of her. Okay, cool. Well, where did you learn the usage of the words that you use? Well, I've got those over time. So I've learned them in school. I've learned them from friends. I've learned some words from, watching TV. I've learned some words from, whatever, whatever. Okay, cool. That's cool. As long as you can understand where they're coming from. But once you understand where they're coming from, then do you want to continue to live them or believe them or trust that that's what it means? I don't. And that's the reason why I'm going to the dictionary, right? It's like trust but verify. Like, okay, I think that that's what that word means. I've been using it for years in that context. So now, and I'm doing this a lot lately. And while I do it on the stream, go to the dictionary, look it up. And I'm like, okay, I did that is correct in what it meant. But now I understand totally what that word means, right? Because I say the word double entendre a lot, triple entendre, and I got what it means. It means that there's levels to what you've written. You can read it this way and get this. You can read it again and it gets this, depending on who the audience is that's listening. However, what I didn't know is that it's not an English word; it's a French word. And then two, that it actually means to hear, to understand, or to mean. To hear, to understand, or to mean, which means that I can use the word entendre a lot more, right? Because what that's saying is that to hear, it's action, right? It's an action thing. To hear. So if you say double entendre, that means to hear double, right? Or hearing twice, or understand it twice. Two meanings. You know what I'm saying? Which means that now I can look at the word entendre and I'm getting even something different from just the word itself and how it's being used, because I can use it in other contexts other than just rap, other than just saying something about that. Like, because I can say that something, is an entendre. It just means that it means more than one thing, or it even means a thing. You see what I'm saying? I guess you can you double that with definition, possibly? Hmm. Well, no, because definition would be a word, right? Because the root word of definition would be define, which would then be uh, um, the understanding of a word. Hmm. But I'm also not French, so, and I've never taken French, so it just it doesn't click with me as what of how it's used in French. Okay. And because I don't have a French dictionary, a little bit challenging, even though I could force to look up, but I got the gist. Now, if we it because we've got to this point, we've talked about all of the things that we've talked about thus far. Again, I challenge you to start to do that. Look at why, where, and how you do things that you already do, and keep backing up. Where did I get that from? Why am I doing it like this? Is this something that came from who? Who did it come from? Right? Because once you identify what the thing is and why you're acting or doing the thing that you're doing, and then you back up and you figure out, well, where did you get it from? And then you back up and figure out, well, what's the meaning of that thing? Right? So that way you can even understand the person who you got it from. Then what you'll know is that I can change myself, right? I can change the thing that I feel like is me if I feel like that thing is not benefiting me in the grand scheme of my life. Because the whole point is correcting those things in the future, right? That happened in the past that made you who you are presently. That's the gist. I can't get it out any better than I just did, people. We went from one thing and came all the way back around and got right back to the title. Correcting the future from the past. So I hope y'all got something from this today. I hope y'all really can, you know, put some of these things into practice, go through that and figure out why, where you got it from, what some of the challenges that you're dealing with, and what you can do to correct them. Um, it it's gonna take time. It's gonna take a whole lot of thought. It might take some conversations that you have to have with some of your loved ones if they're still alive. If they're not alive, then you might have to pray about it. But the point is, and I'm not even being funny. I'm laughing, but I ain't funny. But the truth is, you might have to do that work, especially if you're dealing with something that you need that you really need to figure out. Well, why am I doing this? Where did I get it from? Or something that you know in your mind. You're like, I know for my next level, I'm gonna have to change something about myself, right? Well, what are the things that you have to change? How are you gonna know if you don't even know well who you are? Right? Who am I currently? What are the things currently? List them out. What are the things currently that make up who I am? What is my core things? What are the things that make up me at my core, the things that I believe. Like one of the things that I have, just so for illustration for you guys, one of the things that I have is I believe that I'm a person of my word, right? If I tell you I'm gonna do something, you can bet your bottom dollar it's gonna get done. And if it can't get done, I'm gonna circle back to you way before the deadline and say, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. This is what's going on right now. You know, we can still get it done. We might have to push the deadline back, but we can still get it done because I'm a person of my word and I'm going to make sure that I communicate when things are not going to go the way that I said they would go. Because not everything always goes your way. Not everything can be done in the time that you want it done. I'm not talking to the client, I'm talking about me. And I believe when I make commitments that I can get it done in whatever that time is. And majority of the time I do. But if I can't, I'm not just gonna not communicate with the person who uh, is my client, right? Who asked for the service. Okay. So this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. Make sure that you go do that work. Because in the end, the whole point is for us to be better versions of ourselves. And in this live today, I have got some new understandings personally, right? And I hopefully you can do the same. Hopefully you can sit there and say the same. I've gotten some new understandings, right? Some new entendre, and I'm probably using that word in the wrong context, but I've gotten some new understandings, right? About how I can become a better version of myself, right? Because again, that's what my channel is all about. So if you like this type of content, make sure you follow me. We still at the follower goal. We got 40. We're trying to get to 40 followers. We will get to 40 followers. The point is, I would like to do it sooner than later. Also, just in new on my channel, right now, you can go and you can subscribe. You can actually subscribe right there on the screen. Click the screen, tap the button that says subscribe. If you have Amazon, if you're a Prime member, you can subscribe and it doesn't cost you anything. You can subscribe for free. So subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all of my subscribers. I appreciate all my followers. I appreciate you even if you just came on and watched, but you're not subscribed or you don't follow. I still appreciate you because hopefully this content will allow you to be a better version of yourself. Now remember, you can always go over to richbees.com and connect with us on the Discord. You can connect with us on social media. I got a whole lot of music. All of my music, I still talk about stuff like this, right? Ways to be a better version of myself. However, in my music, when I talk about ways to be a better version of myself, what I'm doing is using examples from things in my life, rap form, to get across either where I'm missing it, something I could do better, a perspective that I saw in the world that I didn't like or I liked, and I'm trying to give context to it so that way you can understand a concept. All of my music is like that. Some of it is boppy, some of it is really hardcore rap, some of it is really like introspective, but in turn, all I'm trying to do is get people to become better versions of themselves. That's my whole life's mission, to help you be the best version of yourself. Okay? So if you go to the website, and I'm gonna show you what the website is, the website's right here. This is what you go to richbees.com and you're gonna get this, right? See, you can get to me on Twitch. You can get to the community, to the Discord. You can download the book, right? You can get a copy of the book, Life is a Production. The music on Amazon Music, Apple Music, iHeart, Spotify, Tidal, YouTube. We have a family podcast that we had for like, I want to say, 6 years or so, called Another One. That's still live. And then if you need audiovisual services, that's what I do as a company in Dynamic Works. All right. But I appreciate you guys. Listen, I really do. I really appreciate you guys for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I'm so thankful that even, what I got 34, 33 followers, 34 followers that follow me right now. It's so appreciated because you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to. You come here obviously because you want to. And I hope that you want to because it's giving you another perspective. It's giving you another way to look at something. It's giving you the ability to learn one new thing in your life that you can implement and become that better version of yourself. So thank you for coming. Tell a friend to tell a friend to follow your man's Rich Bees, the real Rich Bees. And I'll see you again on the next one, which will probably be tomorrow because I stream every day. Just make sure you follow so you know when. And if you subscribe, I got some new stuff coming for subscribers. So know that if you subscribe, you got some new stuff coming really soon. All right. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Follow your mans. Rich Bees,